Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm wanting to, I've realized, pivot this channel just a little bit from what I've been sharing about. Like originally I had planned for this channel just to be about juicing and holistic health and things like that. But what I've recently realized, and something that's really been heavy on my heart lately, is there's just so much more to health than what we eat and how we treat our physical bodies. And I kind of just wanted to share my journey for anyone who might be struggling with this, and I thought it might be interesting for you all to follow along. But I actually want to share my journey about becoming my 100% authentic self and overcoming some depression and some anxiety and other things that I've been dealing with. So I'm going to be doing like a little series on this actually. I'm going to be just like sharing kind of the insights I've been having as I've been learning and studying and reading and, just learning more about myself. So if that sounds interesting to you guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate if you subscribed. And yeah, let's get into it. So I just want to share a little bit about my story, like the background of this video. I've actually been struggling with anxiety from a pretty young age, I would say. I started struggling with it in high school, particularly in my later years of high school, right before I went to college. Mainly like social anxiety and things like that, like being anxious around people and meeting new people and doing new experiences. And then unfortunately, I actually started suffering from full-blown depression pretty much right after I graduated college, like when I started working and things like that. And I've been to therapy and tried like all these different methods. Like I've bought courses and just read all kinds of books and done all kinds of studying about the subject and how I could overcome it. And I've definitely learned a lot in the process. Like I've definitely learned like a lot of different things that help me kind of like cope with the anxiety and cope with the depression and kind of like get me out of it when I'm having those moments. But I've unfortunately noticed that it kind of tends to keep coming back, just over and over again at certain periods of my life, kind of just depending on what's going on at the time. I just became a mom 6 months ago. My daughter's 6 months old now. And I figured I would be pretty susceptible, just given my history, to fall prey to things like postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. And I have been experiencing those as well. So like I mentioned, I kind of just want to share my journey, like some of the insights that I've learned and what I now actually believe is the number one reason that it keeps coming back. And I'm hoping that as I learn and grow, I can help anyone else who might be struggling with the same thing to hopefully take some of the insights that I've learned and it could be helpful on their journey too. So honestly, in a nutshell, what I now believe is the number one cause of depression for me is the fact that I'm almost just consistently mourning, almost like mourning this death of who I once was meant to become. And what I mean by that is I feel like it's so common, so many of us are people pleasers and so concerned about what other people think about us. And like I mentioned, I definitely did struggle with social anxiety at one point in time. I feel like it's gotten a lot better, but I did struggle with it at one point in time. And I feel like that mainly stems from feeling like you're not free to just be who you are and, open to just be who you are. Like you worry so much that people will judge you or you won't be loved or accepted. And so, you kind of just go with what society expects of you. You kind of just go with the flow in order to be liked, in order to be accepted. And honestly, too, since I've become a mom and I've been studying a lot about parenting, I can definitely see how it tends to happen so easily that so many of us fall prey to this. And I definitely don't think that anyone does it on purpose. Like I know every parent is just hands down doing the best that they can. I'm not saying this is anyone's fault or anything like that, but I think it's just so clear how like so many of us are raised to be a certain way, and our parents have certain expectations for us, and society has certain expectations for the parents, how their kids should turn out. So, they're being influenced by society as well. But I think it's a super common theme for a lot of people to be raised to stay small and, just be agreeable and get along and be likable. And yeah, just not really be open about what you're really thinking or feeling about a situation. And so that's kind of another thing that I've realized. And I know it sounds like a little bit cliche to talk about societal expectations. Like I think we hear about that all the time. But what I've realized that I think gets overlooked a lot is a lot of times the societal expectations are just completely almost invisible to us. And what I mean by that is if you're raised in a certain type of family with a certain type of upbringing, or not even a family, but just any kind of community too, with a certain type of upbringing and even things that might be seemingly good expectations, like, for example, just, the American dream of getting a certain job and getting married and having kids and the white picket fence and all these other things. you really have no reason to question those things when you're growing up, and you just say, of course, yeah, of course I want those things. Like, they sound wonderful, everybody else is doing it. Like, why wouldn't I want those things? Why wouldn't those things make me happy? But kind of what I've come to realize is it's kind of amazing how a lot of us are never even exposed to other ways of being and questioning maybe if we do want a life outside of what, society expects is like the normal from us. And we'll build these lives and we'll kind of look around and see what we have and say, wow, is this what I really wanted? So now I want to share some of the things that I've been doing to overcome my depression, some of the steps that I've been taking. And like I said, it's definitely still a journey for me. Like, I'm nowhere near an expert on this or anything, but I just kind of hope that sharing some of the steps that I've taken and the insights that I've had can be helpful to others. So the first thing I had to do was I had to start just being grateful for what I had and where I was. I think a lot of times, like, the way that I would feel is if I wasn't satisfied with the way I was feeling, like I was having a day where I was feeling depressed or just unhappy or whatever, I would immediately start looking for what else I could be doing and say, like, I just need to do something completely different. Like, this situation just isn't working at all. But I kind of think the thing is that we need to learn to be grateful for where we are, because the thing about it is no matter how bad your situation seems or how unsatisfied you might seem, there's always something to be grateful for in the situation that you're in. And so when you can look around and find the gratitude and find the beauty in the life that you already have, that's what opens the door for you to find new things to be grateful for. And so, it's going to be pretty challenging to even be motivated to move forward if you can't find that little bit of happiness, if you can't find that little bit of things to be grateful for, and get the door open and going on that. Then the next thing I had to do was spend a lot of time reflecting, because like I mentioned, I feel like a lot of times none of us even take the time to reflect. We're kind of just going about the life that we have for ourselves, and we're busy and we fill it with all these things, and we never even take time to actually sit down and reflect on whether or not we're happy with where we are and what we're currently doing. So of course, during maternity leave, when I had tons of time off of work and stuff like that, and now being in postpartum and I have lots of time to just sit around and kind of just think about the state of my life, I started really reflecting, like, am I satisfied? Like, is this what I really wanted? Like, is my life, if I were to jump 5 years into the future, like, based on like the life that I'm living now, is the trajectory of my life what I want it to be and where I want it to be? And to be honest, this can be really scary. Like, I think that's why, a lot of times, like, I would hate when I had just like too much free time to just sit around and think about if I was satisfied with my life, because I think it could be a little bit scary to do that and to realize that you've maybe spent years building something, or, years thinking that this was the certain type of life that you wanted, only to have to sit down and be brutally honest with yourself and realize that it might not be, that you really might need to make some changes. And so then once I was able to start being honest about where I was and what things I wanted to be different, another thing that really helped me was to start studying authors who teach you about the power of creating your own reality. And so this is something that I got really interested in, things like manifestation and things like the law of attraction. And then, of course, if you're religious, this can relate to things like prayer and, believing in God and everything like that, and having a connection to God and having a connection to the universe. So some of my favorite sources of things that I use to study myself in this area, definitely watch the movie The Secret. That is one of my all-time favorite movies, and it teaches you all about having the power to create your own reality. And then I also studied authors like Bob Proctor, Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, and Marcus Rothkranz. So if you guys are interested, I can link some of my favorite works of theirs down below, and you guys can check them out. And then once I came into my power and I realized that the thoughts that I have create my reality, and I 100% have the power to create my own reality, the next step I had to get over was honestly just loving myself and telling myself and knowing deep within my heart that I deserve to have a life that makes me happy. And even if it's scary, and even if I may end up being rejected by some people who I picked up along the way in building a life that maybe wasn't necessarily right for me, I feel like I've come to realize, and like what I've learned from all these authors that I just mentioned, is those people were really never meant to be in your life anyway. Like, if people can't just accept you for the way that you are, not only will relationships with them be pretty unsatisfying, because you'll always be kind of like thinking in the back of your head, like, oh, if this person knew who I really was, there's no way that they would love me anymore. So that's naturally going to create some anxiety in your relationships. But also, the test of a true relationship is if a person can accept you for who you are and to know that you deserve to live your life the way that you want to, just as much as they deserve to live their lives the way that they want to. And so as much as you can be your authentic self, and as much as it can be scary to entertain the thought of your current relationships falling away, what I'm trusting to believe is that as I come more into my authenticity, new relationships will form, and the people who are really meant to be in my life will just naturally gravitate toward me. And so that brings me to something I'm actually excited to share with you guys. One of the things I would have loved to have on this journey, and I think, like I was just mentioning, because it can be so scary and we do need support, especially like when we're doing something new and we're still kind of like building the courage to take those big steps, and we're not used to being rejected, and we just need like a lot of emotional support when we're going through things like that. Something I wish that I always had was just some kind of like community or some kind of support group for people who did want to make big changes to their lives and who did want to start stepping more into their authenticity. And so since I couldn't find one, I decided to create one myself. And so I actually created a Facebook group. It's called Raw and Real. And I'm going to be sharing in it, like I said, my passion of, juicing and holistic living and things like that to get, the health on the outside, like the physical health part of ourselves at the optimal level. But I also just want it to be like, the real part of the title. The raw part of the title relates to the raw food, and then the real part of the title relates to authenticity. I want it to be a safe space where people can just come and be honest about their situation, be open about their situation, because that's the other thing too. A lot of times people are too afraid to even talk about their situation with other people because they just don't have anybody they feel like they can talk to, or they feel embarrassed that their friends and family would know, and it would just really change things for them a little bit too quickly. So I just want it to be a supportive place where people can come and they can get together and they can share their experiences and they can share about some of the changes that they're wanting to make. And then when they do make those changes, if they do experience any backlash from friends and family or from, their current relationships of not wanting them to make those changes, I want it to be a supportive place where we can uplift each other and we can encourage each other to keep going and to keep following our intuition and keep stepping into our authenticity. So if you guys are interested in joining, I'll drop the link for it below. And yeah, I hope to see you in there. And then the last point, like I actually just mentioned a second ago, that I realized I had to do in my journey is I need to start trusting my intuition so much more. And I feel like it's really common for a lot of us to just ask other people for advice, like ask other people what they think we should do and do all this other research on what other people have done and run this cost-benefit analysis of, based on data or research or just whatever, things you read on the internet, whether or not it's worth making these changes. But I think at the end of the day, all any of us really have is our own intuition, because we have to make those decisions for ourselves, because we're the only ones that wake up in these bodies every single day. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what someone else says you should do. It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks about your situation. If you feel it on the inside and it feels right to you and you feel called to do it, you have that for a reason. Like that is your compass that connects you to the universe, to God, to whatever you want to call it, and guides you. It's the only thing that can guide you is your intuition and your inner compass. And so using your intuition is definitely a skill, I've realized, and it can take practice if you've never developed your intuition, like if you've never spent time developing your intuition. A big thing for me is I've definitely struggled with a lot of times feeling like I can't trust myself, or I'm not sure if I can trust myself to make the best decisions for myself. And that's because I felt like when I've tried to make big jumps toward what my intuition was telling me, I've either felt regret or I felt like it wasn't the right decision to make. But I think what I'm realizing now is a lot of times that was honestly just fear. Like it's not that it wasn't the right decision, but it was really more so just experiencing some of the loss of, the old situation and experiencing the fear of that and worrying that it wasn't the right decision, as opposed to it actually not being the right decision. So if you guys are struggling with that, just know that, like I said, it's a skill that can take some time to develop. It'll take some practice, but just trust yourself and it'll always lead you in the right direction. So that wraps it up for this video, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. Like I mentioned, this is something really near and dear to my heart because I have struggled with this for so many years, and I really hope that I can be a help to other people who are going through this, because there were so many pieces of content and creators and things like that I listened to that helped me along the way, and so I would love to give back and help other people along the way in the same way. So if you like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. That helps a lot so that other people can find it and other people can be helped out on their journeys. Please share it with your friends if you think there's anybody who would need to hear this or you think it would be helpful for them. And please also follow me on Instagram if you have any questions, and I'll put my handle down here for you to follow me there. You can DM me if you have questions or if you just have requests for future videos or things like that. I would love to connect with you guys. So besides that, stay tuned and I'll see you next time.